Well, Andy, it's always great to be here, as usual. I honestly think this has been one of the more fascinating events I've been to. And I think it's fascinating partly because of where we are at the end of the 2010s and beginning of the 2020s. In session after session, I think we've seen a TV industry coming to terms with the fact that the 2020s are going to be both exciting and profoundly challenging. They're going to be exciting because the industry is going through a huge transition towards a market that is more addressable, more connected, but ultimately much more competitive. Roku were presenting this morning, spoke about their Hisense set launching with 5,000 IP channels, all of whom will be offering TV and video-like content into the homes of consumers. And obviously it will start small, but it's just a sign of what's coming. We're gearing up here in Europe for the launch of the next set of streamers. Apple TV has already launched. Clearly we have others due to launch. The last decade has already seen a lot of change, but I think what people here are now waking up and realizing is that looking forwards into the 2020s, the TV industry is clearly going to have to deal with the fact that it is no longer operating in a pure TV industry. TV and online are converging. We're going to be operating in a multi-platform television market in which linear broadcast will still be a very, very large and important part of the market, but it will be a much smaller part of the market. Big, but smaller. Nobody believes linear will be as big in 2030 as it is today. The good news is the industry has made huge progress in joining up the other bits and pieces. So we know that we have to start treating multi-platform video, streaming services, BVOD, AVOD as part of the TV market. But I think one of the themes to me over the course of the last couple of days has been that there's still a lot of work to be done. There's work to be done on things like measurement, pricing, continue to demonstrate the relative effectiveness of linear versus non-linear BVOD services. All of these things are coming together slowly, but I think most people in the industry would argue not fast enough.
Jon, let me ask you, how do you define addressability nowadays? And we've had this conversation for a number of years about, of course, the pioneering work that Sky has done, but it's becoming much different in the streaming world, isn't it? The notion of the 2 minutes in the States. What is the state of addressability? How do you define it, and how will that develop in the year ahead?
Well, it's a great question, Andy. So I think historically, when we talked about addressability, people really were thinking in the TV market about the ability to deliver a unique ad into an individual household, an ad that will look different to the ads, obviously, that all of the other households are receiving, targeted against a certain segment. I think you're right that things have become more complex. So first of all, we have the growth of what people now call data-driven linear, which really just means providing advertisers with the ability to target their advertising against a wider range of attributes when they're programming a linear service or a linear ad campaign. We have a huge boom in individual addressability. So lots of broadcasters across Europe have rolled out registration. Registration typically involves one person registering to use a streaming service. And then we also have household level addressability, typically provided by TV platforms. And I think a lot of what happens over the next 5 years will be about knitting these things together much more seamlessly. In terms of the state of play, I think the overwhelming characteristic of the European market today is fragmentation. We have markets like Germany, which is over half of the HbbTV sets currently deployed, where HbbTV is a real scale addressable medium, developing very rapidly. We have other markets where, like the UK for example, where AdSmart is really driving the way. In France, we still have this unusual situation that addressable has regulatory and policy barriers to address, regulatory barriers, which are slowly being addressed. So the defining feature, I think, is that we have this fragmented patchwork quilt of different types of addressability across Europe. So for big pan-regional broadcasters, organizations like Discovery or CBS Viacom, who have channels, both free and paid channels, across lots of different geographies, stitching together an addressable campaign across Europe remains very challenging. It's difficult. There's not much evidence that pan-European addressability is a problem that's being solved for at present. It's still difficult. We're still working out addressable in each individual geography, and each European market is going its own route. But I think we've heard a lot over the course of the last couple of days, encouragingly, about how That is a problem which I think we will get to. My guess is around the middle of the next decade, once we've sorted out the situation in individual markets. And I think things like Canoe in the US, who are stitching together VOD campaigns across lots of different MVPD footprints, do provide us with some indications of the way ahead. So there's lots of opportunity for progress, but a lot of work to do. It's a very complex, fragmented market still, with very different approaches to addressability in different countries.